So what I want to do is take you through a journey a little bit. My name is Martin Ross, and this is my family. We've been playing steel drums for a while. But what I want to take you back to is the west coast of Africa. You have countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Benin. Even on the east coast, when you get to Kenya and to the south, South Africa. The reason I picked the song Amazing Grace is the guy who wrote the song, he used to be a slave trader. And he felt so guilty about the slave trading, and he had a coming to knowledge with God, and he wrote that song Amazing Grace. And the journey that I'm going to take you on is going to talk a little bit about the grace of God. But I want you to imagine is you being on a ship, and if you've ever had opened up a pack of sardines, take your arms next to you and just squeeze yourself. Go, ah! Look to your left. Look to your right. Try to say hello. And realize the person sitting next to you, standing next to you, laying down next to you, underneath you, on top of you, doesn't understand what you're saying. But the one thing that people did understand, which is universal, is the sound of music. So what the Africans brought with them into the Americas as we went through the Middle Passage, as we go from the west coast of Africa across the Atlantic into countries like Trinidad, Tobago, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Louisiana, in the South America, Brazil, Venezuela. What they brought with them was this concept of polyrhythm. Poly meaning many different rhythms happening at one different time. And that was the universal language that they spoke to each other. They couldn't speak to each other in their native language, but they could speak to each other in music. And then you begin to start making like a gumbo of different kinds of music. You have the music of the Indians, you have the 12 scale patterns like Beethoven and Bach that were played on the piano. And then the Africans bring their drums. And that music begins to come together and create a cosmopolitan sound. So we use the word diaspora, which means like a flower blooming, spreading its pollen, where the Africans brought their music and they came together in a different culture, a foreign culture, into the Caribbeans and into the Americas, and they began to create a particular kind of music. So we're going to take it down. And that's the kind of rhythm that we are playing. So what we're presenting right here is a steel drum. The rhythm that we were playing was a 6/8 rhythm. You'll find it in Cuban music. You'll find it in West Africa and Nigeria. And the instrument that we're going to be playing today is called the steel drum. Now, if you've ever listened to big band music, where you have the battle of the bands, or if you move up into hip-hop culture in the 80s, you have the battles of the hip-hopsters. You have this group over on the east side and this other group on the west side, and they begin to battle out. Well, in the islands of Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean, just off the coast of Venezuela, the steel drum was created. And as you're thinking about the Middle Passage and you're thinking of World War I and World War II, as people go back and forth over history through the Atlantic, you can think of the Caribbean as a natural fueling stop. And there, at a natural fueling stop for supplies and so forth. And there they had this big source of metal, 55-gallon oil drums. And at the end of World War II, they had a big parade. And there were a couple of radio DJs. And the radio DJs started banging some pieces of metal, and it got really popular, and they started creating something called the steel drum. And these different groups battled with each other for dominance on the island, for the best musical talent, and then it became the national instrument of the Caribbean. And so this is the steel drum. It's kind of like the piano. Has 33 different instruments. We have a steel drum band that we play, that if you're interested over at the Salvation Army, my wife and I are the captains there. You can come learn and play the steel drum. So the message that I want to bring to you is that sometimes out of oppression, sometimes out of difficulties, something beautiful arises. And one of the beautiful instruments that we have is called the steel drum. So we're going to play a celebratory song that you might know. It's called St. Thomas. And if we're going to play a soca rhythm, which you can go ahead and start. And if you want to clap your hands, you can. If you can pick up the rhythm, you can clap your hands like this.